Good morning, everyone. I'm Cyndi Robinson. I'm the Deputy Director of the Illinois Library Association, and I am also the staff liaison to the Small and Rural Libraries Forum. I'm very excited to have our first event today. As you probably know, the Small and Rural Libraries Forum is one of our two brand new forums. The other is the Students and New Professionals Forum. And they're going to be kicking off with their first webinar, I believe, in November. So watch for that if you have any staff that would be interested. This is something that we have been discussing for years, pretty much since Diane came to ILA. We've been talking about starting this forum, and I'm very excited that it's underway, and I'm excited to work with all of our leaders to make it strong. So now I'm going to turn things over to Lynne. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'll just say, please continue to use the chat for any questions or comments. And if you, when we get to the discussion phase, if you'd like to speak, you can click to raise your hand, and then I can turn your microphone on for your comment or question. So now I will turn it over to Lynne.
Thanks, Cyndi. My name is Lynne Noffke, and I'm the director at the Limestone Township Library District, which is in West Kankakee. And you have tuned in to the webinar, Reopening Our Libraries, What Went Right, What Went Wrong, and what is next. And we all know that that's a mixed bag, don't we? We're very fortunate to have several people on our panel to share their experiences. Besides myself, Sharm Runke from the Peru Public Library, Bobbi Perryman from the Vespasian Warner Public Library District, Krystal Stupigia from the LaSalle Public Library. Krystal couldn't be here today because she had a staffing issue, but she has some notes later on to share, and we all know what that's like to step in for staff as well. Janet McAllister from the Rochester Public Library District, myself, Krystal Gulley from the Harrisburg Public Library District, Alyssa Williams from the Morton Public Library, and Tammy Grau from Chester Public Library. So welcome aboard. We're going to have a fun time. I know that you guys have lots and lots of questions. And Kathy, I'm so sorry. And it was, never mind. And Kathy Grafton from the Odell Public Library. And that's a shame that I screwed that up because she's probably closest to me. So I'm going to hear about that later, but it's okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And what we asked the panelists to think about were questions related to how did you reopen? What services did you offer? What did you think you did right? What would you have liked to have done differently or could have done differently? Biggest challenge, handling school-age children, young adults. What do you see ahead? And I don't know if we have like the 8-ball or the crystal ball, but we'll see. And how have you managed to stay sane? Really important. What self-care practices have you followed? We're not going to, each of the panelists is not going to answer all of those questions, but they're going to touch on what's important to them and what they really would like to share. So we're going to kick it off, and I'm going to ask Sharm Runke from the Peru Public Library to go ahead and share.
Sharm, you're still muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Yep, and I had such a great opening. I'll never be able to top that again. I'm Sharm. I'm from the Peru Public Library. We're in the north central part of the state. I'm in the Rails library system. Our service population is about 10,295, and our card holders are not quite 3,000. We went through and purged quite a few while we were closed and had nothing else to do. Our budget here is about $750,000. And we have, I'll look real quick here. We have, I have 7 part-time staff and 4 full-time staff. Usually pre-corona, we were open 60 hours a week, Monday through Saturday. Right now, we're open Monday through Saturday, but we are only open 44 hours a week. When we closed on the 17th, we actually used the 16th of March as the closing date, and we ran around and basically learned how to turn everything off. I now have a list of where the on-off switches are for all our equipment. The 20th of May, we opened for lobby service, and the 6th of July, we opened for limited library service. We're open for browsing. Patrons can use the computer for up to an hour each day. Wi-Fi is not encouraged in the building. We send them outside for that. Faxing, paper printing, photocopies, that type of thing. Some of the things that were, the questions that I chose to answer, the challenges in getting the word out. Closing everybody, the end of March, I think everybody just assumed, yes, all the libraries were closed. It was getting a lot of coverage in the newspaper, all of that. But getting the word out that we had lobby service and then that we were opening for limited service. We still have people who walk in and say, oh, you're open. When did that happen? Well, over a month ago. We sent out to newspapers, the radio stations, we sent out on Facebook, Twitter, all of that. But it's amazing. We just have not been able to reach everyone to let them know we are here. Interestingly enough, with that challenge, also the patrons that who fussed at me and wanted to talk to the director about, you know, you're not providing full service, etc. I always kind of gently quiz them. And actually the ones who fussed the most and wanted to talk to me weren't my patrons. They were patrons from the surrounding libraries within a 50-mile radius, which I'm a little dumbfounded. It's like, why are you yelling at me about my library? Go yell at your director about your library. And I have also obviously shared that with my nearest library, so they know who might be coming in and yelling at them. How did I stay sane? I gained 15 pounds. So my doctors aren't overly happy with how I've stayed sane. So lots of chocolate, a lot of sleep. Here in Rails, and I know there's a similar one for Heartland, Rails, there's the director's list, an email list, and that frankly has been my godsend. I am an Alex Todd groupie, and I can't wait to see what he has replied and what snark he has put into his reply. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I did have to take some anti-anxiety attacks, medicine. I actually had 2 panic attacks, which is not something that I had ever experienced before. So I now I have my little pills with me just in case, and that actually has now, I think, made sure I haven't had any more. But I did not expect that as a response to all of this going on. You know, nothing phases me, no big deal. This one phased me. So that actually has made me, I think, more empathetic to staff and patrons of what they are going through. If I can have a panic attack and break down in front of my staff, God knows what my patrons and my staff are dealing with. So I'll shut up now and let the next person go.
Okay, thank you, Charm. I appreciate that. I was supposed to speak before you, but that's okay. No, it's not your fault. I am Anna Yackel. I'm from IHLS, and I am just here to moderate the discussion. And I think that we've all been through quite a bit. And Charm, I think everything you went through, I think all of us have gone through to one degree or another, including gaining the weight. So you look good, you look sane. So you came out of this all right, yeah. So I have also had the good fortune of actually visiting every one of the libraries that we have speakers from. And everyone's library is really great. And as far as I know, the walls are still standing on all of them. So it's all good. So our next presenter is Bobbi Perryman from the Vespasian Warner Public Library District in Clinton, Illinois. And it's a lovely library. And Bobbi has really been a leader for the rest of IHLS through all of this too. I know you've had great information that you've shared and we really appreciate it. So if you can unmute and join us now, that would be wonderful.
Thank you for those very kind words. Clinton, for those who don't know, we're smack dab in the middle of the state, about halfway between Bloomington and Decatur. My service population is just over 12,000 spread across 5 communities. The largest is Clinton at 7,400. So we are pretty small, pretty rural. I have a budget of just over $1 million, mainly because we have a nuclear power plant in our district. And I have a staff of 15. So the questions that I decided to answer, one of them was the biggest challenge. And our challenge is the same as Sharm's, getting the word out about all the changes. We closed March 17th and we were virtual only for half of March and all of April. And then we started slowly reopening. In May, we went to curbside pickup. In June, we went to lobby access only. And then at the end of June, browsable stacks. We've just now opened up workspaces. We have Wi-Fi in our parking lot. We weren't allowing any seating areas in the building, but in DeWitt County, we have about 50% poverty rate for children. So we have remote learners who had to be remote learners for whatever reason, who have no internet at home. We even have a family who don't even have a car to sit in our parking lot to get on Wi-Fi. So we've opened up workspaces just for them so they have a place where it's air conditioned and they can be inside and they can get access to what they need. But we still have patrons 2 months later like, oh, I didn't know you were open, or, oh, I didn't know you were open until 7. I thought you were still closing at 6. And that's just a problem, COVID or no. I still get people who are like, oh, I didn't know you collect DVDs. We've been collecting DVDs for 20 years. So I think that's just, as libraries, we haven't figured out a good way to market ourselves. And I think that's just an ongoing challenge. The next question I was going to answer is dealing with school-age children and young adults. For the most part, we aren't treating them differently from adults because there's nothing to do in the library but pick up items or use a computer. Because we took away seating areas, we took away all the toys and the board games, so kids are coming in, getting what they want and leaving. The only change we made was for remote learners with workspaces. And right now we're asking anyone younger than high school age has to have an adult with them while they're in the workspace, just to make sure they're keeping their mask on, they're keeping their desk area clean, and they're not touching all the other desks areas. Seeing ahead, my crystal ball is broken too, just like everybody else's. We're working with our board right now for kind of an 18-month plan. I look at us continuing to increase our digital offerings. We upped our budget for ebooks. We added temporary digital cards while we were closed down. I think we'll keep the digital only cards. So, sorry, my phone always rings when I'm on one of these. We'll keep the digital only cards as an option for patrons so they don't have to come into the building to get a library card to access our e-content. We are not offering any in-person programs yet. We're kind of seeing how things shake out with the schools. Clinton schools are in session in person. So far, there's only been one COVID infection that I've heard of. But if things continue to go okay with the schools, we're thinking either late this fall, early next winter, we're going to start offering very small in-person programs. Maybe we do a craft session, but we do 5 different sessions of it so we can keep the group small. We're still planning on that. And there are certain things from the pandemic we want to keep. The curbside pickup worked out really well. I am a mother with small children. Drive-throughs are a gift from God. So I want to keep that curbside pickup for people who just want to pull up to the front door and we can run something out to them really quick. So we're working on how to keep that program going. As for staying sane, it's hard. And it's really hard, especially I've noticed in this profession, we really care about what we do a lot, and we should. What we do is extremely important. but I have to keep reminding myself, even though my library is vital to my community, nobody's going to die if they don't have library service. And that's just a mantra I had to keep in my head, because during our shutdown, I was working 24/7. I was always in the building, the only person here most of the time, or I was on my phone doing stuff. I was on my computer doing stuff. I was so concerned. I got to make sure my board still sees that my staff is doing things, so I don't want my staff to be furloughed. And it all came to a head on a Saturday when I had been messaging my whole staff about this, and this. And it hit me that I was just exhausted, and I sat in my bathroom and cried for an hour. And I felt a lot better after that. And I messaged my staff again of, ignore all my previous messages, we're taking weekends off. And it's very hard to do that to disconnect like that, because it's kind of always in your brain, I gotta do this, and this. But I force myself to, on Saturdays and Sundays, I don't look at my email, I don't look at my phone, I take that time off. I've been pushing myself too hard, I've been pushing my staff too hard, which I didn't want to do. So I know it's hard, take that time to disconnect. I watch cheesy horror movies to relax, so that's what I did. Do whatever it is that you need to do so you can be refreshed for your library, because you can't give if you have nothing inside of you left to give. And that's what's going on in Clinton.
Thank you, Bobbi. And, you know, I want to thank you and Charm both for your candor about how this affected you on such a personal level, because, again, I think we've all done that. And I also appreciate the fact that you brought up that a lot of your community lives below the poverty line. And I think that's very common for all of us in rural settings. And it's a hard group to reach. And hopefully, in some ways, I'm hoping that maybe some of those people who are a little more reluctant to come to the library will now be more at home in the library, because we are doing this extra effort to reach them. So I commend you for all of that. And I think everyone's doing a great job. And thank you, Bobbi. And now it's time to move on to Janet McAllister from Rochester. And Janet's library is always friendly and welcoming. It's a small library. Surprise, you know, that's why we asked her to speak. But they do a lot of creative things. And Janet has a really good, I like Janet's idea of service to her population too. She does an excellent job with that. So if you wouldn't mind talking, Janet, it's your turn.
Hi, good morning. My name is Janet McAllister. I'm the director at the Rochester Public Library District. I've been the director for 8 years now. My district is, the population is 7,993. We were closed for almost 10 weeks. We opened fully on June 1st. For my community, curbside was not even an option, because they like to browse. And that's just about knowing your community and what they will be happy with. We might as well just stay closed if I was not going to let them actually in the building and browse. So we did open fully, and in that 10 weeks when we were closed, we were able to really think out our plan of what we needed to do to be ready with our signage, our acrylic sneeze guards around the circulation desk. And we had a good thought out plan as how we were going to open. We made sure we had all the masks, the gloves, the disinfectant wipes, everything that we were going to need. So I feel like we had a really great plan to open. We moved all the furniture out, unplugged the computers so they couldn't even try to turn them on. As soon as we opened, people started coming through the doors. They were begging. The phones were ringing off the hook while we were closed. And I did allow my staff to come in the morning or in the afternoon, one at a time, so that we weren't exposing each other. We also, during that time when we were planning and setting the areas up, we also did 3D printers for the ear guards. We had both hospitals in the Springfield area contact us, and both hospitals received 600 ear guards. So we did 1,200 with a 3D printer. So my staff stayed busy, and I knew that was one thing that my community would ask is, you know, if they were still being paid, what were we doing? And so that was good that when I had my board meetings, I would be able to report, you know, this is what the staff did, this is what we did. Plus it was also really great PR pieces in the newspaper. The other thing, we've not had any problems really with people coming in and not wearing their mask. Before we closed, our door count would be about 7,000 a month. And the first month we were open, it was at 4,000. So they immediately started coming in. I think our numbers are still lower because instead of coming in every 2 weeks, they're only coming in once and getting all the stuff they need, you know, and they're not, and then they'll call and renew. So they're not coming in as much because they don't want to expose themselves. But we do have all the toys are out. So when the little kids come in, it's really kind of sad because they run back there for the first time and then they see that all the toys are gone. And so there's been tears. That's the hardest part, I think, is what the little kids come in and they're like, and then they stop and they're like, oh, and the rabbit's not there. So then they're like, where's the rabbit? And so that's the hardest part for us, I think, as the kids. And then summer reading wasn't what it usually is. We still had a good turnout of kids, you know, attending the online programs and signing up, but it was all just that virtual and they weren't in the building. So it didn't feel like summer reading. So that was, you know, sad. But we're giving them the service. So the patrons are happy. They're just really happy to come in. And that's really what we're doing right now is just that you come in, you get what you need, and then you leave. It's not standing around talking with us like they would in the past. And we have now opened up one computer. Our community, they really want our Wi-Fi, not so much our actual computer use. They'll bring in their own devices. One thing that we did have to do with when this all happened was we had 6 Wi-Fi hotspots for checkout, and we had to increase that to 21 because we are a rural area. And so, especially with schools being remote, they definitely needed the Wi-Fi hotspots. And I'm not really sure that that's even enough. They could need more. Unfortunately, the school's not really helping with that. They can get the Wi-Fi, you know, in our building, outside the building. We would prefer people not stay very long in the building, but I have now put out 2 tables in case they do need to come in for schoolwork. So far, we haven't had that, but school's just now starting, so we will see how that goes. I have increased the days of having the cleaning company come in and clean. So that's my future, is thinking like, am I going to need to continue that even more? I just don't know what the future is. I don't think I'm going to have programs anytime soon. But who knows what next month is? I don't know. I think that's the thing, is we are just trying to stay very flexible, but also making sure that customer service comes first. So if we, you know, the Wi-Fi hotspots, our policy was, you know, everything's 2 weeks in our library. We've changed that to be, you can keep it for the whole semester, because why bring it in, wipe it down and pass it on to someone else? Just keep it. You're going to need it the whole semester. So I think that's what we're really trying to do, is just being extremely flexible to meet the needs of our patrons. So that's where we are right now. And we're just going to try to do our best and keep everyone safe. And unlike everyone else, I just came back from Vegas. So that's how I deal with stress. So I have to self-quarantine and work from home for 2 weeks. So that's how I deal with my stress. I just leave Illinois and just have some fun.
Oh,
Thanks.
Thank you, Janet. I have two questions for you. Did you win anything? And also, where's the rabbit?
Well, okay. Number one, I came back with what I had. So I call that myself a winner. And just to let you know, Vegas is not what you think it is right now. It is so strict. I feel like going in Springfield, I could get it way more than going in, because the bars are closed, shows are closed, nightclubs are closed. Like, it is shut down, mask over your nose 24/7. They don't play with you there. It's really strict. And number two, and plane was only half full, so there's no one around me. But number two, the bunny rabbit goes home for the weekends and the evenings with our youth services director. And so it was at her home, so.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, thank you. And I think that you brought up one of the points that, we all really miss that interaction that we had with our patrons, that more in-depth that you can have. And the fact that the kids went back and cried, that's heartbreaking. And of course, summer reading not being what we're used to. So thank you, Janet, for that. And we do have two questions that have come in. The first one is, how do you convince your board to open fully? So, how do you, I think we could change that to, how do you work with your board if they don't want to open the library as much as you feel you can open the library? Anyone have any insights into that?
We worked very closely with our county health department, and of course this is going to depend on your location. It took us a while to find the right person to talk to at the county health department who would actually answer my questions. But once we did, I got all of the questions that my board president had, that my staff had, and just sent them all in an email to Mike, and Mike answered them all individually. And he's the one who, because my board president was reluctant about doing any of the workspace seating areas, but once he got that information from our health department of, yes, you can do it under these guidelines, having that health authority issue guidelines is what helped us.
I would also agree that we have a farmer's market on Sunday afternoons, and our farmer's market started that Sunday and we opened that Monday. So to open the farmer's market, we had to work really closely with the health department. And that would have looked really weird if we were open for a farmer's market but not have our library open, so, but we did work real closely with them. The two things worked hand in hand. So that was, I think, a really big part of my board. And plus they really, I bring them so much information and facts and that they really trust, and they wanted that library open too. So I think when we all are on the same page, that really is helpful.
Okay. I know there was another question. It was like regarding opening up spaces for people to do study, or, how did you set up those spaces? I mean, do you have, like, how do you isolate them, or do you isolate them, for people who want to come into the library, like students? I think, Bobbi, you mentioned that you had those kind of things. And I think,
Yes.
some of the rest of you.
I can go really quick and then I'll stop talking. But the way that our building is set up, we do already have 2 study rooms. So we've made the study rooms available, but on a strict schedule. So you have a 2-hour block, you can use it, and then a half an hour between each block so we can clean. And we have 1 large meeting room. And again, following guidelines from our health department, we set up perfectly spaced out tables with 1 chair at each table in that big space that patrons can have one of the tables, and it's assigned. So we tell them, okay, you're going to use table number 3. You stay at table number 3. You keep your mask on. You don't touch anything else. And we have staff that periodically walk through to make sure everyone's compliant. And it's the same schedule with a half an hour in between so we can clean everything. And my board president was very concerned just about the same people being in the building for too long. So it's 2 hours per day. And then you're done. You can reserve for tomorrow if you want, but it's 2 hours per day. And I'll put a link just to our policy in the chat. It's highly specific to our building, but depending on your building, you can make it work. And credit where credit's due, I stole a lot of this from Effingham Public Library and from Athens Public Library because they are doing something similar.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else care to take a whack at that? Okay, I did get another question in the Q&A. What do you do if you have board members who refuse to wear masks and you have kids who run around and touch everything even though they're not supposed to? So, you know, how do you deal with the scofflaws?
At my library, basically they're told to put a mask on or leave. And if they don't, staff comes to get me and I politely tell them to put the mask on completely over their nose. And if they don't, I will escort them out. And I've had a few who've grumbled at me. One who has said he's never coming back to the library ever again. He's the one who wasn't one of my patrons to begin with. So I think he tried Princeton, but decided that they weren't any nicer than I was. What we found is that if we stand firm, they leave, they grumble, they leave, but they're back the next day wearing the mask.
Yeah, it's a little more difficult when it's a trustee. Yeah.
My trustees firmly believe that they are setting an example for the community, and they're probably better at policing each other than even I could be, because they feel that they are setting an example for the community. So that helps.
Okay, thank you. I am going to go ahead and continue with our panel, and then we'll get back to the question and answer. So if you can continue putting your questions out there, that'll be great. The next person on the list is the wonderful Lynne Noffke, and her library is both small and rural, but very charming. And Lynne makes it even more charming. It's a very welcoming place, and I'm sure your public have missed you while you were closed. So how have you handled all of this, Lynne?
Thank you so much for those kind words. Which library are you talking about? No, I'm kidding. We missed our patrons. We missed our patrons a lot, as I'm sure all libraries have. It has been, like everybody else, it's been challenging. We closed March 18th. And staff was able to work from home. We did a lot of staff training. We worked on programming, trying to work on virtual programming, planning for summer reading virtually. It's kind of amazing how fast things change. Thinking back at the beginning of April, we had the potential thought that maybe the last week or two of summer reading, we would go from virtual programming to maybe a hybrid. Maybe we would be able to have patrons come in for programming, and no, the answer is no. And you kind of look back and things change on a day-to-day basis, and it's our job to take the ball and roll with it and try to do the best that we can. All of staff returned the last week of May to get ready for curbside service. We opened up curbside service June 8th, and that was very well received. And then we made those little inroads. It just felt like everything is step by step. And as much as I thought it was complicated to close everything down, obviously we all know how much more complicated it is to open back up. Do we have the PPE? Do we have the social distancing? Is my staff on board? And my staff has been wonderful about this through everything. Really pitching in, but a lot of different pieces to get ready to open, and then not knowing what to expect when you opened. But we were able to open July 13th. We are continuing curbside. I think that it's a great resource regardless of COVID-19 or not. Now that it's in, it's staying. And the people that had used curbside until we opened, most of them gravitated to coming into the building to check out materials, but those that are still using curbside, the majority have situations where they have a loved one with immune compromisation, and they're very, very thankful that we still offer those services. Everything else is limited. We moved all of the fun stuff out. We have a capacity of 15 patrons at a time. We have not had that, but it's nice to have that in place. So currently we are in Region 7. So we are under, Governor Pritzker has put Region 7 under mitigation orders for the next week and a half now. But because we had things really tight in place, even with how many patrons could come in, we really haven't had to make any changes for that, which is good. We're open twice a week for an hour in the morning, just for those that are seniors and immunocompromised. And I think the hardest challenge for us was limiting children coming into the library. It grieved us doing summer reading virtually. And we have also been one of the few that have restricted children. Nobody under the age of 18 can come into our library, with the exception of all day Tuesdays now and all day Saturdays. And the reason is very simple, although I hate it. It's difficult to have children be able to social distance, and the way that our library is set up, there is no space between one section and the other. They are literally all they flow into one another, and I had to make that hard decision. I keep looking for times when I can expand those hours, and usually that's about the time that we hear different changes in the news, and it's just really hard to do those small baby steps. But the patrons that have been coming in, it's been slower. Patrons that have been coming in are thrilled that we're open. When the governor put the mitigation into practice, we literally had a few patrons that very next morning going, "Are you going to be open?" It's like, yeah, we're going to be open. Our hours are just about the same as they were before. We close an hour early at the end of each day so that staff can do a more thorough cleaning. And then they do clean throughout the day if that is possible, looking at where people have congregated. We have 3 public access computers. You're limited to 2 30-minute sessions or 1 one-hour session a day. Whoever came up with the press and seal over the keyboards, that was a good idea. I like that. But with the mitigation, we've gone from wiping them down in between and replacing them daily to we're just replacing them after every use. And otherwise, other services are available. I've notarized things. We will take copies and print for patrons. We will fax for patrons. And of course, the checkout period. We've also worked hard to beef up our virtual library. And some of that in looking at what's going to happen next. What do we foresee? Well, we know where we've been. And while we don't know quite where we're going, I want to be able to say that the library is set up so that if we had to close, or with schools closing and going to remote learning, that we really do have something for everybody. I'm in the process of putting in, I believe, if I can scooch more money, maybe it won't be the last step, but at this point, it's the last step. One more resource that will help tie what we have together, whether we have lifelong learning, stuff for the kids, and then more educational resources. We had online library card sign up when we were closed. I was glad that we offered it. We did not have a huge turnout. There are some things that have worked well for some libraries that did not necessarily work well for us. We don't care. It's all about ideas. We will try what we need to try, and we'll tweak it as we go. We're always thinking about the impact on the budget with what changes we have to make. Quite frankly, I took money out of the book budget to help build up the virtual library, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. The board has been great. I forgot to mention we serve a population of 5,035. Our budget is just under 319,000. We have 1,800 library card holders. I have, including myself, 2 part-time staff, 2 full-time staff. Yeah, I'm here all the time. 2 full-time staff and 8 part-time staff, and we have 1 sub. It's been a journey. And like Sharma, I eat a lot of chocolate. I do get on the scale. I don't like it a whole lot. I really should avoid that. And my wine intake at the very end of the day, whenever that happens to be, that has increased. And my knee and my soul feel better for that. So.
Thank you, Lynn. Those are words to live by, I think. It's interesting that you bring up the fact that your library was set up so, you know, especially in small libraries, this is so crucial, that you kind of flow from one thing to the next to the next. And that's like what everyone always told you a library should be. It should have a nice flow, people know where to go. And I was reading articles where they were talking about how in homes, people are like, since the pandemic, they're stepping away from open floor plans. They want to have those small little boxed in areas now. So I don't know whether that's something we might consider more as we go forward. That might be something we look at in the future. I'm not sure. And also, I think you raised a good point about how, you know, and some of the other speakers have already done this too, where everyone is looking more towards a virtual presence, virtual materials, virtual collections, virtual services. And I see that continuing as well. So
And we want to have that relationship with the school district. We want to be able to, and we've always had a good relationship and with the other local organizations, but we want to have something to be able to say this is substantive and can assist, but we need their help to also help promote, because I agree with the other presenters, that communication process is very, very difficult. You know, that we're open, that we're closed, what do we offer, what is needed, how can we help? So,
yeah,
but
I think those are good points. And I think that I think one of the upsides of all of this is that perhaps we will have better communication with our schools, with our community groups, because of, you know, trying to provide services, especially internet and all of those kind of things. I think we have to forge new bonds with everyone in the community. So in some ways, this is great, even though, you know, no dark cloud doesn't have a silver lining. I didn't say that correctly, but anyway, you get the idea. If Trump can get by with it, so can I, okay? So on to our next speaker. Thank you very much, Lynn. That was very good. Our next speaker is Krystal Gulley from Harrisburg Public Library District. And Krystal's library is also a very nice library. I encourage all of you to go down to Harrisburg. It's a beautiful part of the state. And it has some really interesting restaurants in Harrisburg. And of course, the best part is the library and getting to see Krystal and all of the wonderful services she provides. She really is, you know, she's really stepped up the involvement of the library in the community. So Krystal, why don't you tell us how your pandemic has been?
Hello, everybody. I'm Krystal Gulley. I am at the Harrisburg District Library. I've been working here since about 2013. I've been the director since 2016. So we are a district library. So Harrisburg's population is just about 9,000 people, but our library service population is just a little over 13,000. But I expect after this U.S. Census comes out that number is going to significantly change. We've had a lot of people move away in the past few years. We do have 4 full-time staff, including me, and then 4 part-time staff. We closed our library on March 18th. We reopened on June the 1st. Definitely a strange 2.5 months. We were very happy to be able to get back open to serve our community. I'll also mention here, just for some perspective, that Harrisburg has had 80 confirmed cases thus far, and the majority of those since July the 7th. So I think all the way up until then, we'd only maybe had 10 cases. So when we were reopening, we, had a little bit of a different outlook. It got worse, I guess, because everything started opening back up again, but they have slowed back down somewhat, so we're glad about that. As far as how we reopened, the first step there was just a lot of planning. I poured through a lot of emails from all of my fellow librarians, looked at a lot of different things and tried to mine out the best information for, what was going to work for our library, how we could adapt our practices going forward. And once I had that prepared, we shared it with our local health department. And some of these things I was typing up, I felt it was overkill, like some of the reopening procedures and things like that. But really, to have all that in place made us so much more confident going forward. To have the approval of our health department made us feel a lot better about reopening. So once we had the go-ahead for that last week in May, we started curbside service. We wanted to encourage that. We wanted people to continue using that. Then we reopened on June the 1st. We had limited hours at that point, and we also did a staggered employee schedule. So it would be me and 3 of the staff for 1 week, and then the next week it was me again with the 3 other staff. So we didn't, cross-contaminate one another. Of course, we're all spread out. And I stationed myself. We locked one door, so everybody had to come in through one door. I'm sitting there at a little table when everybody comes in to make sure everybody, is wearing a mask. They're using the hand sanitizer to make sure we didn't go over the recommended number of people who were in the building, which really was not a problem at first. We are getting busier now. We did reopen then July the 6th. We went back to normal hours, and we're still doing that. Other than in-house programming and, one-on-one close computer tutoring, we basically offered the same services as always. Of course, things are a little bit different. We only have 3 computer stations open so that everybody's social distanced. We've switched to a 1-hour time limit instead of 2 hours. Most of our seating's been moved out of the upstairs and moved to downstairs. I think something that we could have done differently, and I don't know if this is because we hadn't had a lot of cases, but we had all these things in place, to keep people safe while they were in the library. We knew what we would do if a staff member tested positive, but then all these scenarios started popping up with staff, like, well, her neighbor was around somebody who had COVID, and she had babysat that kid, that woman's kids. And so all these different little things started popping up, and we were like, okay, how, what is the protocol for that? Like, how does that, does she need to stay home now? So I wish we would have maybe went through all of that a little bit earlier. I just don't think we even knew that was all going to arise like that. But we do have a PA on our library board, which was great. She's been working with all of this through all of this COVID, so I've been able to reach out to her to ask questions when things like that happen. And as far as kids in the library, at first we really had very few kids or teens who were coming into the library. I think a big draw for them a lot of the times are the programs, which of course we're not having any in-house programs right now. Their areas were social distanced just like everyone else. So once school has started back up, we have so many e-learners. They all have these Chromebooks and they need the Wi-Fi. So we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And I saw an email from somebody at Athens Library, I think, who had taken their conference room, and I think Bobbi was talking about this earlier. They, you know, just distanced all the tables 6 feet apart, made like 5 different little study areas downstairs. And so we kind of started that. We haven't advertised it yet because we don't have all of the particulars in place, but it has given us a space to send some families when we have been full upstairs already at the limited amount of tables and chairs we do have upstairs. So I think that's a good way to do that. You kind of get them into a completely different space. Everybody can be still spaced out and you can still provide that service.
Thank you, Krystal. And Charm gave you a nice shout out telling people that they should follow your library's Facebook because you guys are always posting interesting ideas and programs, and I agree with her. I think it's interesting that like so many of us, you've adapted your space to suit the needs of your community, which is wonderfully commendable. Unfortunately, you have the space. Not all of us can do that. So that's nice. That's really good. So thank you very much for all of those insights. Our next speaker is Alyssa Williams from the Morton Public Library, which is very near and dear to my heart because I grew up very near to Morton. And when my parents were very ill, I spent a lot of time doing work from the Morton Public Library. And I know that Alyssa has a wonderful reputation, and I think it's interesting that you, Krystal, mentioned, you know, all of these contingencies for like what happens when you have somebody get sick or they've been exposed or all of this stuff. Well, Alyssa is one of those fortunate people who have had a staff member come down with this. And so we'll let her tell you the story. Okay, Alyssa?
Okay, thank you, Anna, for that lovely introduction. I'm Alyssa Williams. I've been the director here in Morton for 5 years now, which means I guess I can't say, well, I'm new here. We are right outside of Peoria, and if you ever come to ILA in Peoria, you have likely driven through Morton on 74 as you head into the city. So I have a budget of about $950,000. I have a staff of 20, 11 part-time, 8 full-time. My service population is about 16,000 and about 8,000 of those have cards. So our last day of in-person library service was March 14th. On Monday, March 16th, we did holds in our lobby, hold pickup in our lobby, and kind of then shut everything down. And then our building remained closed for 20 weeks. So we spent the summer, we are fortunate here at the Morton Library to have a beautiful outdoor reading garden space. And so we spent the summer doing things in our garden. We started accepting returns in May, and then we transitioned to Book Valet, which is what we named our curbside service, in June. And we saw that as a permanent service enhancement for our patrons. And then we spent the summer, so I was like, patrons miss browsing? Well, we can roll our new books out on carts into our garden and use our iPad and mobile circ to check out materials. We were at our farmers market every week with material as well. And we did programs in our garden also. So we used our outdoor space as much as we could. We did a virtual summer reading program, but one of our prize levels this year was receiving a yard sign from the library that said a summer reader lives here. And our staff went to deliver those signs kind of as a like, surprise, here we are with your sign. And that was really great for our staff and our patrons because I know other panelists have mentioned seeing their patrons in the building. That helped us remain that connection with our community when a library staff member shows up and puts a sign in the yard, because lots of the kids were playing outside because what else is there to do right now? So then I wanted summer reading to be over when we reopened the building because I didn't want there to be a confusion about prize pickup or all this other stuff. So we did not actually open the building to services until August 5th of, well, I guess that was last month now. So we opened the building on Wednesday, August 5th. Our hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 to 6, Saturday, 10 to 2, and Tuesdays and Thursdays the building is closed, but we run our book valet service. And then on, so we were open on Wednesday the 5th, and on Sunday the 9th, I received a call from an employee that she was getting COVID tests because she'd lost her sense of taste and smell. So, yay! Unfortunately, on Wednesday, the 11th, so we were open on Monday. She did not come to work on Monday, but we opened as business as usual, assuming positive thinking. On Tuesday, the 11th, I was notified that her COVID test was positive. So then it's very interesting because I worked very closely with our Tazewell County Health Department, and we did, so they had sort of contact traced, but I did our own contact tracing, and we have a large, so I'm the only person with a private office per se. We have basically a large bullpen style office for the rest of our staff, and the medical director at our health department said, even though so close contact is defined as being within less than 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes or more. It does not matter whether you're wearing a mask. So we have all been wearing masks. We've had 99.9% mask compliance with our patrons. That was our biggest concern about opening and having to do the mask police. That has not been an issue for us. Our patrons come in with their masks. They're very happy. We haven't had our teens come back. We've removed all our seating like everyone else. So basically the medical director said, you have to quarantine your entire office staff. Well, then I didn't have enough staff really to operate because our office staff handles our returns. They handle our phone answering. I mean, I took out 6 people. So all of my full-time people also, basically. So we closed to the public on the Wednesday, Thursday. So we closed the public on the 12th, and we were closed, the building was closed to the staff Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because I needed to have them come in and do deep cleaning. Also, so my bookkeeper was one of the people who was quarantined, except I had a board meeting that Wednesday and we needed checks to go out and payroll had to be done. But she was quarantined and didn't have remote access to the payroll system. So she was the only employee allowed in the library those days so that we could get checks done and get payroll done. And then the staff came back on Monday, the 17th, and we did book valet that week, and we reopened on the 21st. Originally, when I talked to the health department, I was told our quarantine would end on the 21st. We'd be released back to work. Well, they had implemented a new system for contact tracing. So when we got our official paperwork, we were actually not released to return to work until the 22nd. But we had enough staff who could open and be open on the 21st. So we had communicated we reopen on the 21st, and we did stick with that plan. So that's the challenges. That made us re-examine who worked with whom, and so while we were in quarantine, the person who does our scheduling did this fantastic chart of how many people come in contact with, because at our checkout desk, it's really not, I mean, our workstations are 6 feet apart, but really when you're working in those workspaces, and also what the medical director told me is, if you better be safe than sorry, if you feel you've had contact, you should assume and quarantine. So I knew moving forward that if any of my checkout desk staff got a positive test, whoever their partner with them would want to quarantine out of their own concern, which I totally, yes. But I also knew that we needed to reduce our risk of exposure and try to minimize how many people they were paired with. It wasn't practical for us to do the A-B team that some libraries have talked about, but we really just looked at who people generally worked with and refigured that while we were moving forward. So that was our experience. The thing I did not expect from that was, I released a statement on our Facebook page on Tuesday night saying we would be closed as of the 12th and reopen on the 21st. And every media outlet in Peoria picked that up. On the 10 o'clock news, I heard that all my employees were being tested and all of them were quarantined. And I was like, no. But before I came to libraries, my undergraduate work is in public relations. And so I have a marketing background. And so I reached out to the stations and I did a lot of media correcting and answering questions the following day. So, but I want to talk, so that was our challenge. That was the biggest challenge. But I want to talk a little about what I think we did right. And I know some of you have talked about communication. We actually, I feel like I'm the answer, like one of these things is not like the other because I'm like the biggest library. I mean, aside from having COVID in my library, well, a staff member with COVID, she did not have any contact with patrons, so that was not a concern. I should mention that. I don't feel like communication has been our problem with our patrons. Right when we closed, we started doing a weekly email newsletter, and we have about 3,000 subscribers to that. And so every Thursday, they got an email newsletter from us about, you know, what virtual programs we were doing, when they could return items, when that was possible, we highlighted a different digital service every week. And then we mailed a postcard to, instead of our regular newsletter that we did a postcard mailing to every household in our district, mentioning our summer reading program and how to register. And, you know, at that point we had started accepting returns and book valet was starting. So, you know, we did a postcard. So we've had pretty good, we also have a digital sign on our corner of our property and people rely on that for information. So we've had a pretty good run at getting information out. Our hours are still confusing to people. And one of the reasons we're going to stick with this schedule for this month, and then kind of, we are still, on the days we just do book valet only, we're still running about 40 patrons, their materials. And I've got 2 staff. I've got 1 staff member. That's been another challenge for us. I've got 1 staff member who does not feel comfortable coming back in the building, and so is going on leave. I've had 3 people. I've lost 3 staff members during this transition. I also have another staff member who is going on maternity leave at the end of the month. So I'm down a lot of staff members, and so our shortened hours are really helping us. And our busiest time is 10 to noon and 2 to 4. So we're sticking with those hours through September. We'll see what happens in October. As long as our book valet stays active, I think I can justify my board remaining closed. The other reason, this was the important thing I wanted to mention, is so when you're contact tracing, so if you have a staff member who tests positive, you go back 48 hours from when they first had symptoms. So our individuals first experienced symptoms on Sunday, which meant I only had to go back to Friday. She didn't work on Saturday. So if I have a staff member who first exhibits symptoms on Friday, Thursday is a closed day for us. Now I do have staff in the building, but not as many. Most of my full-timers work from home that day. We alternate who works from home on Tuesday and who works from home on Thursday. So it mitigates our risk in terms of contact. If they test positive or if they develop symptoms on a Monday, well, that doesn't quite work. But anyway, if they develop symptoms on a Thursday, you know, I only have to worry about Wednesday. So it kind of depends on their scheduling, but it helps us. That's the other way I sold it to my board, is it helps us reduce our risk. Because after this happened, we had a board meeting the next day, and they did decide that this is, as a small agency, this is just a risk we take in being open. You know, this is just the cost of doing business in this era. So if we have to close for a few days to clean and then and figure out how staffing will look like, we're doing that. We did move some more people out of our office, and we remeasured everybody. So my study rooms have been turned into offices for my staff. But you know, what I think we did right was I think we did a good job in communicating to our patrons throughout the entire summer. I think it was the right decision for us to stay closed for as long as we did. I mean, we were closed for 20 weeks, but we were very, when people would call and say, are you open? We would say, well, we're serving you outside. You can see us at the farmer's market. We were very careful in our messaging about, we are still giving you library services. I am fortunate that our community is fairly affluent. When our school flipped to virtual learning, there was only like 20 families in the entire district that didn't have technology access, and they figured that out. So opening the building so people could have access to computers wasn't a priority or a concern for us. And I know that's a fortunate position for us to be in, but that also helped me not have to rush to open the building. Plus our book valet had like taken over all of our adult services area. And so we had to kind of reimagine, and we moved all our furniture and everything. In terms of self-care and staying sane, I guess I started running back in April when it was clear that this thing was going to last a long time. So I actually have lost weight. I run 3 days a week. I mean, I'm not like, it's really more like a jog, like let's not oversell it here, but that has helped me really just process all my feelings about this. Although my wine consumption is up, but in fact, there was a day, possibly the day I got the phone call, that my husband was down by Costco, and I was like, you need to go buy 4 bottles of wine for me right now. Don't ask any questions, just go now. Because I was quarantined. So, and that's an interesting thing too. So I was quarantined because I was a close contact, but my family is considered a contact of a contact, so they're not quarantined. It's very strange. Of course, if I had experienced symptoms, then they would, you know, it's a whole domino effect that I had not anticipated. So I'd encourage you to think through some of those scenarios. But yeah, so in terms of self-care, we've also really worked hard at staying in touch with our staff. We call them if we haven't seen them in a while. We did a bunch of, we upped our celebration committee upped its birthday celebrations, and we deliver balloons to people's houses. And so we've really tried to take care of our employees. Care is a big one of our library values, and care for our patrons. And so, but also just taking care of ourselves. I realized that, and that's the other nice thing about opening till 10 is I don't have to be in the building until 9:30. Like, so if I get up late because I was up with a kid, I can still go for my run and still get to work. And like, I really have let go of some of, you know, as I think Bobbi was talking earlier, you know, I have to do what's best for me, because if I'm not in a good space, then my organizations and my staff aren't going to be in a good space. So, you know, I've rethought my schedule a little and have just tried to, no, quarantine does not mean you can't go for a walk or a run. You're allowed to go outside. You're just not allowed to go. In fact, they encourage you to get daily exercise as a way of staying mentally sane. They say that in your quarantine letter. You're just not allowed to go to stores, and you're supposed to socially isolate from your family. And I thought, well, I like to work from home. This will be great, this quarantine. But man, when everyone else can go places and you can't, it's a lot different than when we were all sheltering in place in the spring, and everyone was kind of in it together. When you have to quarantine, but the rest of the world is going on, that was actually really challenging, more than I expected. And because I can introvert hard, give me a book, the way I coped with that was I also watched a lot of Parks and Rec, which if you haven't watched, I don't know why it took me so long, I just finished watching it last week. Leslie Knope is my hero. And then I will end my comments because I've rambled on long enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. I agree with you. I love Parks and Rec, and I love it when they talk about librarians being evil people. We're like just the worst because, we contend with, we're in competition with the Park District in their opinion. But yeah, so I love their portrayals of librarians. It's a lot of fun. I have some questions for you. First of all, from the question and answer, Alyssa, there was the question, can they steal book valet from you? Professionally speaking.
Yes, of course.
I love that title too. That's really great. The other questions I have personally is, how did you pay for the signs that you put in people's yards? For the summer reader, you had like the summer reader here, but I think that's a great idea. How did you pay for those?
So we're fortunate that we have a dedicated fund at our community foundation that spins off about $2,500 each year for our summer reading program. And we typically use all that money for outdoor performers in the summer, but of course we knew we weren't having any outdoor performers. So we put that money into the yard signs, and then we also put the money in to pay for the Read Squared app. I will say, our summer reading participation was way down. We typically have about 1,000 kids participate, and we had about 250 this year. So we way over ordered our yard signs, but people loved them, fortunately. So we will be using them for years to come.
Okay, and my other question is, you're talking about how the media blew up your situation. Do you have a media policy, and would you be willing to share that with us if you do?
No. I don't have a media policy. My policy is that I will always talk to the media because I think it is worse than saying no comment. Some of you may recall when I first became director in October in 2015, 4 months into my tenure, we had a very challenging situation with an individual who had a knife and attacked some justice people. You may recall that, and that blew up in the media too. But we were able to focus on the positive in that story. So I will always talk to the media, and I'm not afraid to reach out and correct them. And I find them to be very open. In this media market, they're very, it's very diminished in terms of, they're very much one-man shows. And so you just have to reach out to them. And I will say my policy is, and what I have communicated to my staff is that I'm the one who speaks for the library. So don't answer, don't post. I was the one who put the statement on social media. I was the one, and I put my name on it. I think that's very important in this day and age. So it's pretty simple. It's like, don't post anything without my approval, and really I should be the one posting it.
Okay, I can see that we may have you as a future speaker on these very topics, especially since you have that background. That's so crucial. I think a lot of us don't have that background, and it's very easy to be like the deer in the headlights when someone gives you that call, especially about something that you're not thrilled about everyone knowing, but they're going to know anyway. So, okay, well, I appreciate all of that, and we do have a few other questions here. Let me just go through those real quickly. Let's see. Okay, 2 threats during the pandemic include 2 scrapbooking classes, 2 treats during this pandemic include scrapbooking classes that were online at libraries, and I picked up the kits curbside. It was great. Okay.
That was the other way I stayed sane. I'm a huge scrapbooker, and I have never bought so many scrapbook supplies in my life, nor scrapbooked as many pages as I did during the pandemic. I made a layout every day in June. So scrapbooking, running, and wine.
What a combination. Yes. We don't hate you because you lost weight either. That's not for all of the rest of us who gained weight. We don't hate you. We really don't. I think that's wonderful. And Just because you've taken to drink, we won't hold that against you either. Okay, I have another question. July was usually the time I would ask for raises for employees. After being closed and getting paid, I did not approach it. Have any of you asked for pay raises lately?
We did, and obviously, for me, as far as I'm concerned, my staff deserves it because my staff is amazing. But the other reason we did is because of minimum wage. Because we have currently 4 employees that were impacted that are getting annual increases. And these are our newer employees, and they're wonderful and they do an amazing job, but they haven't been here for 10 years and have so many more responsibilities, like some of my other employees. So we asked for pay raises just to keep that disparity, because it is not right that my employee that's only been here for a year, who only has 1 special project, gets paid the same as my employee who's been here for 11 years, who does CERC, who does barcoding, who does outreach, and who does toddler time. So, and we approach the board like that of, we've got to have this disparity if we're going to keep our really good people, and the board agreed. So that's how we approached it.
Okay, and I also had someone ask, are you having, does your board want to keep the fewer hours? I mean, I'm looking at that. Yeah, it's basically, the board wants to keep the hours reduced, but you're ready to move ahead. Anyone facing that problem with their board? No. Okay. And then I have another question here. How do you handle items grabbed from the shelf but not wanted? Are they binned, shelved on carts and quarantined, or are you just reshelving as usual? So how do you handle those things that have been touched and not taken out?
If we know they've been touched and not taken out, we put them in our quarantine bin, but it really hasn't come up that much for us.
Yeah, it hasn't come up for us either. We do have a cart where people can put stuff, and we do check them out to quarantine, but that it's been very small.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons that we have the hand sanitizer right there at the entrance, just because we are hoping that if you use that, you maybe kill some of the germs before you go out browsing, because we're not going to follow you around and see every book that you touch. But if there are, books left on the tables or magazines, we do have a spot where we never have them reshelve the magazines anyway. So that stuff is taken to quarantine, but hopefully the hand sanitizer is killing some of those browsing germs.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And we found that patrons definitely do use the hand sanitizer. We had it before, we added stations, additional stations, and they're walking right up to it, using it, and then going to browse. And then they come and check out, and then they use it before they leave.
Okay, good to hear. Good to know that people are, I think most people do take this responsibility, and I think that sometimes it's easier to focus on the people who aren't doing the right things than the people who are. So, but it's nice that, you're actually seeing these things happen where people are being responsible. And if we're giving them the tools, they will comply. So hopefully that continues. Our next speaker is Tammy Graf from Chester Public Library. And Chester is kind of a hilly place, and it's very scenic. And Tammy's library is an older building. It looks like an original Carnegie. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's very, very pretty on the inside and out. And it has this lovely statue of Popeye in the basement, which I've had my picture taken with. And so it is like the home of Popeye. And it's interesting to drive around town and see everything else. I think they have Bluto and a few other people out there too. So, and Tammy really amazes me, because even though she's from a very small library and kind of a remote section of the state, she still manages to kick booty and get things done. And she has also done some really interesting programming. And one of the things that she told one of my coworkers, which I thought was just amazing, is she said, you know, with the pandemic and online programming, we're no longer limited to just the usual suspects. We can go globally. If we wanted to, we could have someone from London do a program, and that's absolutely true. So with that kind of vision, I'm going to let Tammy tell you how she handled this.
Yikes. Well, thanks, Anna. You know, my situation, we're a long way from most of the other presenters in many ways. Distance, budget, size of our library. Chester is located along the banks of the Mississippi River. We're very hilly, like Anna said, not good cell service, Wi-Fi, and all that kind of stuff that you encounter in those kind of areas. We're about 60 miles south of St. Louis. We're in the dreaded region 4 of the state right now. So we just got rolled back, and, you know, our restaurants can't be open inside and all that kind of stuff, just starting today. So our population is around 8,000. We are a prison town, which means that 2,000 to 3,000 of our population is incarcerated. So really, you know, 5,000 is around 5,000 is the general public that we serve on a regular basis. I've been the director here for 23 years. That's hard to believe. Time goes certainly fast, and I've learned a lot over those years. Trial and error is something that has been just a part of all we do here. We've always been known as a welcoming and friendly library. So one of the things I think that I've learned during this pandemic is to always take the positive approach if we can. And I don't mean positive COVID, I mean a positive attitude. If somebody comes in the door that doesn't have a mask, you know, oh, did you forget your mask in the car? You know, we have one kind of scenario. And there's been times where we've got the look or some comments that we know where this is going. And it's just an automatic, we really appreciate you wearing the mask. If we all cooperate, we'll be able to keep the library open. And that's all we've ever had to say. We've never had any confrontations, you know, a few eye rolls, and often, you know, what we have found, if you're really nice to people, they're really nice back. If you put them on the defense, then, oh, you know, sometimes it becomes ugly. And I know there's times where, you know, that's happened to us too, not necessarily during this situation. It's not a perfect world we live in. And with so much negativity out there, we really try to take the positive approach. As far as staff, it's myself and one other full-time person and 2 part-time. So we're really small. I need to hire a couple more part-time people, but that just isn't possible right now. Our circulation desk is small. You know, I can only have 1 person in there. And then it's usually me on the outside trying to assist and help in other ways. We too are only open 3 days a week. We're open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays to the public. And we use Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for curb service. We'll do special appointments. We use that time to work on virtual programming and those kind of things, take-home kits that I know some of you have mentioned as well. I have learned that the staff greatly appreciates. This is something that we didn't do before, and maybe we were the exception and not the norm. We schedule staff to begin, especially on the public days, and I think will continue as our hours expand, at least a half an hour of paid time before and after we close to do all the extra things that have to be done, you know, quarantine and clean and all, you know, all that kind of stuff before we pretty much started about the time we opened, and we stopped paying about the time we closed. But the staff has definitely said how much they appreciate that extra time, paid time to do the things that are better done when the public's not here. Virtual programming, as I mentioned, has been a really important part of what we do. And I don't just mean like Zoom meetings like this. I mean, we've gone out and done a lot of recordings. Just for instance, we did a garden tour of one of our patrons who has a lovely flower garden and has the expertise to talk about that garden. And the last time I looked, there was over 750 views of that video. So we would never, ever get 750 people in here for a program. Now I know, you know, it's a passive program and people are looking at it their own, but they've sent her questions and that kind of thing. Another program that we did that was really successful was a virtual quilt program where we had patrons submit pictures of their quilts and a description, and you know, we taped all that. And I have found that anything with a local twist is what my community likes the most. We've done some paid performers over summer reading. You know, we were trying to be supportive of the people that we contracted for programming and the like. But if it has that local element, it seems like the people are more receptive to it. And like Anna said, our audience has grown outside our community too, you know, because of that. You know, we do have a rich local history, and we emphasize that in many ways. So that was a big deal for us. And why I think it was a big deal, not only because of the people it attracted, is because it did keep us in the public eye while we were closed. We closed in mid-March, like many of you have already said. We did curbside starting in June, opened the doors to the public in July. And at my July board meeting, my board of trustees decided, along with me, thankfully we've always been on the same page as far as how we progress, and I'm very thankful for that, that we were going to keep this, you know, the hours I mentioned earlier, plus no in-person programming for 2 months. We were going to keep it that way until mid-September, to that September board meeting. And what that did was gave me the luxury of not having to look at all that information that was out there. I just didn't have to think about it. And so when I would see somebody like, oh, you know, we're going to start this or we're going to roll back that, I was like, I don't have to think about that. I don't look at that, because I, like I'm sure many of you, had information overload. I could be online 24/7 trying to learn and what should we do? And there's no clear answers. We all have to do what's best for our communities. And how I stayed sane through all this were my dear friends and co-librarians from Sparta and Redbud. Brenda from Redbud and Susan from Sparta. We met weekly via Zoom. You know, we all appreciate all the resources and opportunities available through the system, that we would learn so much on a broader scope. But those weekly Zoom meetings where my neighboring librarians and I just truly talked about what we were doing, and we were all kind of on the same page, and when one would kind of stumble or not sure about how to go, you know, we were there to pick each other up. So that was very affordable therapy for me. And recently, in the past month or so, the Stillville librarian has been joining us too. So that is one thing that I would highly, highly recommend, is find that small network support group of people, of librarians that are in a similar situation to you as far as size and even location, and help each other, even if it's just a pat on the back or a tissue for the tears, because we've had them all from one end to the other, the real highs and the real lows. Looking through my notes real quick to see if another thing that I did too that I thought helped us is when we did get ready to open, I didn't publicize it. I mean, we put the open sign on the doors. When people called in, you know, we told them what our hours were. We looked at our hold shelf and we called all those patrons and said, hey, your material's ready for pickup, be it, you know, curbside or coming on in. But that gave myself and our small staff the ability to get our feet wet rather than jumping head first. Then the next week, then we started online publicity of what we are trying to do. You know, we don't even have our own radio station here in Chester. We share with a couple of small towns in Missouri. We don't have TV stations. So communication is a big deal for us. And it used to be everybody got their information from the once a week, you know, local papers, but that doesn't happen so much anymore. So we too try to find the ways to reach out to people in so many different ways. And the only thing I regret is that I hadn't embraced technology as as much as I should have to offer some of our previous programs virtually. And I don't think that'll ever change in the future. I think people would be disappointed if we would have a local speaker or something and they couldn't do it like this or watch it on their own time. So I'll wrap it up because I know we're running long, Anna, but I hope I covered some of the things that will be helpful to the folks listening today. Anna, your mic's not on, I'm not sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much for telling me that. Yes. I know sometimes my daughter will mute me when I'm talking to her, so it's like, okay. I think those are amazing things that you've done. And I especially love the local twist on things. I love the idea of going to someone's garden and just having them tell you about, you know, this and this is, you know, and if they're an expert gardener, it's especially because they know the community, they know what grows there and what doesn't grow there. I mean, that is amazing to me. And I love the quilt idea because everyone loves to show off their quilts, whether they'll admit it or not. I think that that's really cool. And, you know, I think that I know some of our libraries did story walks, and some of them also have done, like, you know, they've tried to get more people interested in local history. Sometimes they've had people speak about local history, and those have been very popular. So I think those are all great ideas. And I think it kind of builds community even when, you know, the library's not open, we're still out there building community. So that is phenomenal. I think those are great ideas. We do have some questions, which I'll switch to, and then we'll get to Kathy, who's very patiently waiting out there. Someone mentioned it, but are you all considering reallocating budget in some manner to e-resources from, like, say, physical materials, and also have any of you considered increasing support materials for homeschoolers?
This is Charm. Yes and yes. Usually about a half of our per capita grant goes into the physical collection. Instead, this year I think it was a little over 5,000 of the per capita grant went into ebooks. I'm with the Omni group, so I did some purchasing on my own, and then I put it into the pot of money for the co-chairs to purchase. And yes, we are drastically hoping or fast trying to update or expand our home learning collection, homeschooling collection, both books and kits. And we're highlighting those on our Facebook page, and it's amazing how fast those things are going out.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and I know that, you know, there are lots of nice grants out there too, especially the 3 from the state library are out there, and I hope everyone's taking advantage of those. And I know that the state would like to see an increase in electronic resources and, of course, better internet connectivity. So I think those will probably be the things that will be big in all of our futures. Let's see if there are any other questions here. Oh yes, somebody commented that they feel like a plus side of the whole COVID thing is that they had 2 employees who were long timers, and they had not been ready to retire, but, you know, one was 80 and one was 90. And they decided with all of this that they decided to retire finally. So I guess that's, you know, in some ways it's sad to lose all that knowledge, but in other ways it might be an upside, who knows. Okay, now on to Kathy. Kathy has, you know, it's interesting because I remember meeting Kathy for the first time when we were at the ARSL conference in Springfield. And I was sitting with one of our other members, Sarah Zumwalt from Litchfield, and we were talking about how cool it would be if there could be a statewide effort to, you know, highlight all of the libraries along the old Route 66. And I still love that idea, and I'd still love to do that. So I think that that would be a lot of fun. And then, you know, I know down here our libraries do instead of like a pub crawl, they do a library crawl. And a lot of people really enjoy that, going to various libraries across this, you know, our system and seeing what it's like. We actually had one couple who made the whole circuit almost, which is amazing because it's such a such a large and diverse area. So I love that idea, and I'm all for that. Anything that can promote the state from one end to the other has got my vote. Okay, and yes, Kathy, you have a very interesting library too, and a very interesting community. It's like I used to always drive by your library on 55, and I was always intrigued because there's a church that's kind of in the center of town there that really stands out from the interstate. So, but I did try coming to your library once, but it wasn't open, so I just was in the parking lot. So I'm counting that as a visit. Okay, so take it away, Kathy.
Well, next time we'll try to have you stop in. Thank you. I'm Kathy Grafton at the Odell Public Library District in Odell, and I've been there for 9 years now. This is my retirement job. I'm full-time at 20 hours a week. I have 2 staff that trade and keep things open, and we have a cleaning lady, and that's pretty much it. We have someone who does our payroll outside. But the Odell Library is an interesting little library. I live in Pontiac. Both my staff live a block or right across the street from the library. So when the weather's bad, I can work from home and they can go open things. I like that. We are a very, very small library. Our population service area is 2341, and we have about $130,000 a year to work with. And the pretty little windmills that you drive through, if you go by on 55, have been a great source. They almost doubled our levy, and that's been really nice. Our little claim to fame is that our library was started in 1904 by John McWilliams, who was Julia Child's grandfather. And they had a family home. He was the local banker and actually later donated $10,000 to the library. So we've got little mementos of Julia around the library to kind of remind people of that. And if you're ever wanting to look at absolutely gorgeous handwritten library records from 1904, we have 2 beautiful books that I get out once in a while and look at all the wonderful handwritten notes from that time period. The best thing is we became a district in about 1986, and that means for a very small library, we have a pretty good funding base, and a lot of farm families come in and use us, and that's really nice. So like all of you, what I think would like to think we did right was that fateful weekend early in March of the 14th and 15th, when I think we all sat home and watched the news and started going, oh my God, I think we have to close our libraries. I moved my trustee meeting up 2 days and had worked on the plan. I had been thinking about it because we could kind of see things were coming. And I had a whole pandemic plan with 3 parts sketched out and brought that to the board on that Monday. We closed Monday night. We did reopen on Wednesday enough for people to come in or to get some books and things. The big thing was we are a voting site. Our program room is a polling place. And we had about 250 people that were coming in on Tuesday. So the library itself was locked up, but they could go in and vote. Then we just closed that room for months. We just didn't go in there. And then eventually we cleaned it. But that was one way to deal with it. I was the only one driving up and going to the library. And I want to say something about our staff in this time. I had one staff member who had a young child who has a little trouble in school anyway. She was really dealing with trying to keep him going in school. I didn't expect anything except she would come over and empty the book drop some days. We stacked all our books until we could, quarantine them for a couple months. And my other staff member had a relative who was dying, and through the month of April, the rest of March and April, was really dealing with that and family issues. And my board was so good because there was no question about people getting paid. We used the same timesheets for 4 months, 3 or 4 months, and just kept paying everyone. And I think it was key that they did not have to worry about that. Now, we're very small. It was pretty easy for us to do. Even our cleaning lady didn't come in. She's compromised, and her husband. And so we didn't have them in the library. I worked from home and went to the library to do things. And like many of you, I think I worked way more than 20 hours for that whole time period and still do. So I just think that's an important thing to talk to your board members about. If I had lost my staff in that, I mean, to retrain people when we finally could open again would have been a nightmare, and I wouldn't have wanted to do that. So who knew what PPE was a year ago? You know, it's a big term now. So I was hunting that down so that we could reopen. A lot of my time was spent doing that kind of thing, you know, figuring out how we would move things, getting mats on the floor to space people. My Door and Sign Company is a great resource. They had signs right away. You can make your own signs, and they will help you even design them. We got one that says keep 1 cow distance, which is great for a rural library. Had to wait 2 months to get a hand dispenser that goes on the wall, but I did get it ordered early. So I was very proactive with everything that we were doing. And I think that was helpful. We also kept the public informed. We posted lists of things that they could do, resources in the community. I came out of 25 years of social work. So anytime I knew something about jobs or information, we'd put them up on our doors. We would put them on the windows so people could come by and read. We kept our Wi-Fi on and really tried to get ready to reopen, you know, when we could. So we reopened for curbside. We planned out and reopened curbside. The girls did come back in May so they could check in all those materials that had been sitting for a couple months and start to remember how to do everything. That was exciting. We opened for curbside, which went really well. And then on the 29th, we were ready to reopen again. We had posted rules on the door. We had a sign that also had the rules that we had made from My Door Sign Company. And I did a newsletter to 650 families in our district that told them our regulations, our expectations, what we hoped we could do, and about our the biggest challenge, which was summer reading. So Alyssa, our summer reading last year, we had 30 kids sign up. It was the best ever, most ever I'd had. I was so excited. So I guess I'll never get 1,000 in my county or my area. But we did get, and last year we had 7 paid programs where we had different people come in, magicians, different things. We did a field trip, which we do every year with the kids, and we always have a family picnic at the end. So this year, what the heck was I going to do? None of those things were going to work. We ended up packing up and making activity bags of all the prizes and things that we would be giving out normally. And had 15 kids sign up. I was pretty excited by that. We set up 3 virtual programs. The third one, my board members went around town and took pictures of places in Odell, including that church you mentioned, Anna. And we made a thumbnail sheet and handed that out to all the families that wanted to participate. And everyone that turned one back in got all those things, but it took them a while. And it turned out to be the talk of the town. I'd never done something quite like that. We ended up giving all of the families that participated gift certificates to our ice cream truck. We have a wonderful summer ice cream truck. And then we gave, the winner was chosen, and we just drew because they all had filled them out. And they got a gift certificate for the family to a local restaurant that was opening back up. So we tried to keep things local too. And it worked out. It wasn't what we've ever done for summer reading, but it gave me new ideas for the future. So that was really great. And I'll mention one thing we're doing still for the census. We had great plans for how we were going to get census people in. What we found is most of our library patrons coming in have already done their census. So how do you reach the other ones? So we asked the ice cream truck, we bought a bunch of gift certificates from them. And every Friday, if you've completed a sentence, you put your name in our cute little box. And every Friday we draw a name and they get an ice cream coupon for like $10, I think. And they've got a posting up of it too. And different people will stop by and put their name in. It's a way to get people in. Because I was very tough the first week. Both my staff and myself are either older or have health issues. We do not want that. People had to wear masks or we would ask them to leave and we'd serve them outside. I had one run-in with a very mad father who was, you know, a taxpayer and he should be able to come in. And we said, that's fine. What is it you want to do? I want to sign my son up for summer reading. I said, great, I'll bring out the information. So it worked out. Word gets around, and word did get around. And we have masks right at the front desk, which we offer people. One little old guy who drives around town on his riding lawnmower, I've seen him get off the lawnmower and bend over and put his mask on before he comes in. So we just feel that's important. We have hand sanitizer at the front door. Very few people are using our computers. We've got 4 patron computers. One is kind of off limits so that we can keep space. And we haven't had a lot of people want to do that. We have a half-hour limit to be in the library. Kids 10 and under 10 have to have a parent with them or someone, an adult with them. And that has really cut down on our after-school use of the library because kids would come in and hang out. But we're trying to keep everyone safe. Again, my board, really, really good. And we feel now that if we had to close again for any reason, such as someone being ill or whatever, we could still do curbside, and that's a plus. And I think when I get time, I want to do more with programming, but I do most all of that with everything else. So it's a little exhausting to even think about the future right now. And how I took care of myself was yoga on the porch all summer. My yoga classes were no longer being held at the yoga studio, but we did them online. And so I got to where I just love doing it on my screened-in front porch. And wine is also helpful, chocolate, and Zooming with my family. But I think we still have a long way to go with this. And I'm very hopeful. Our library will be closed for Election Day because I do not want to fight with people who are not patrons who decide they want to walk into the library without a mask. And they would be there because it's going to be a big election. So my board has just decided it'll be a holiday this year. And that's about all I can say, I guess. I think we've been on here a long time. Yep, I think that's my highlight. Anna.
Sorry about that. I think that's very interesting. All of the things you've done. I love the yoga on your porch. That's a wonderful idea. And I think that's, you know, you can even do chair yoga. So there's no excuse for not doing that. Running may be a little harder on those of us with bad joints, but yoga we could all probably do. That sounds like a good alternative. I also like the way you highlight your history and the community, and I think those are both important. The one thing that I was taken, which really helped me fall in love with rural and small libraries, is all of the unique things they have to offer. And it's something we don't give ourselves credit enough for, but it's fascinating. I mean, I love doing road trips, and you don't need to go to Wisconsin. You don't need to go to Missouri or Iowa or just do Illinois. It's an amazing place. Lots of amazing towns, lots of amazing libraries. It would be, you know, it would be fun just to meet all of the librarians in their own setting, you know, just look at the buildings. It's like, it's amazing. I just say, get out there and explore. And that's why I'm so happy that ILA gave us this opportunity to form a group that will hopefully highlight all of us in the rest of the state. We're not going to mention any particular city or area that seems to dominate, but yes, there are lots of us in the rest of the state, and I think this is a great opportunity for our voices to be heard, and I hope you'll all join. And I hope we can have more of these because I think it's been a really interesting discussion. I've enjoyed hearing from libraries of different sizes and different places in the state, and we all have some really common denominators. We all want to have that connection with our community. We want to serve our community. You know, we don't want to lose any ground on the fact that we have been the heart of our communities. And how do you do that with COVID? And it seems like you guys have managed to keep that, which I think is an amazing testament to your work and to your libraries. I'm going to turn it over to Lynne to see if she has any final comments before we close. And I want to say thank you to all of the panelists. You were absolutely brilliant, wonderful. So I'm so grateful. Thank you. Okay, Lynne, take it away.
Well, I've learned a lot, and you're right. I think we have so much in common, and it's interesting to see how we can all grow and how some things, you know, it confirms that, yep, we did this, but also really outstanding creativity and ingenuity in the face of situations that change on a daily basis, and it's a big deal. As well as going home and taking care of our families, or when we were sheltering in place trying to run libraries and taking care of things at home and trying to find that balance. I wanted to encourage everybody to make sure to check in for the Small and Rural Library ILA Forum. It's really a place for us to be able to share information, help each other out. It's a support system. And if you have ideas for future webinars that you'd like to see, don't hesitate to either email me or Cyndi or Anna, or post it on the forum, because we want to hear that. Sometimes we're just busy trucking along, and when we hear those ideas, that helps us get excited too. So I just want to thank every single person on the panel and every single one of you out there that attended. It's been a great experience.
Thanks everybody for joining us. I just put in a link to the forum webpage. And if you haven't already joined our Google group, you can do it there. This has been recorded, and so we will be putting the recording up later today, and I'll send the link out to everyone who wasn't able to attend today, but I'll also put it out onto the Google group as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at robinson@ila.org. Thanks, everybody.
And Carol, this is what I did during today's meeting. It's amazing what you can get done as you listen and use your hands.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.